Hello. We are currently experiencing a depression epidemic. Researchers estimate that almost 20% of the American population meets the criteria for some form of depression at any given time. And yet, we don't talk about it nearly as much as we should. Why is that? Those suffering from depression feel like they're alone in their suffering and ashamed of what is going on with them. They fear the stigma that comes along with being depressed. And those who are not depressed find it hard to talk about it. And so we all avoid the subject. Author and mental health activist Andrew Solomon explains that the opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality. And as he described, everything feels so much harder when you're depressed. And for college students, these struggles are further exacerbated because the transition to college is challenging in its own right. This is a time when most students are away from their support systems for the first time, having to balance their newfound independence with taking care of themselves, managing all their schoolwork, and dealing with the financial burden of a college education. College is also when many students are diagnosed with depression for the first time. 44% of American college students have reported feeling symptoms of depression. 75% of lifetime cases of mental health conditions begin by age 24, and suicide is the second leading cause of death for college students, adding up to around 1,100 deaths each year. Deborah is one of the many students who were diagnosed with depression in college. In hindsight, she recognizes that she had lived with some of the symptoms for many, many years, but she perceived them as being normal. All the new experiences and adjustments to college life brought her to the realization that something was wrong, which had its own set of problems, like isolation and feeling as though she didn't belong there, all of which made her depression even worse. Courtney, on the other hand, had been suffering from depression for over 20 years. And over time, she began to recognize the signs of an oncoming slump. She also knows what she can do in those moments so she doesn't feel as bad. She says, I know all these things, it's just that my depression doesn't know them. And so she has begun to make plans ahead of time so that when she notices an oncoming slump, she can quickly take action and begin her recovery. I wonder what were the main differences between Courtney and the college students I had been talking to. Courtney has experience. Over time, she has been able to recognize the indicators of her depression and understand how she is affected by it. College students, on the other hand, are mostly new to their experiences with depression. They are struggling to understand what is happening to them, and they no longer feel like themselves. So I began to wonder, how could I help college students be better prepared for their depression? I struggled with this question for a while because I was only looking at the problem from the point of view of the people I had been speaking to, students suffering from depression and mental health professionals. And that's when I understood that as a designer and a social innovator, I had to look at this question from a different perspective. What could I offer students that they did not currently have access to? I understood that maybe they needed a different lens through which to look at their struggles. And I began to wonder, what role could creative expression play in this? How could it help them look at the problems differently? Like a mountain range, people's journeys with depression is full of ups and downs. My goal is to reduce the depth of the valleys these students experience in their depression by being able to recognize an incoming slump. They can take action quickly and before getting to a really low point in their depression. My intention is for students to work on this when they feel well. I certainly don't want to add to an already overwhelming list of things they have to do when they're in a slump. Seekit is a toolkit that helps college students explore and navigate through their experiences with depression. The kit's main goals are to help students better understand how they're affected by their depression and to enable them to prepare for its ups and downs. The main element of the toolkits are activity cards that prompt students to explore themselves and their depression in different ways. through reflecting, writing, and drawing, and so much more. I chose to use cards because they provide the most flexibility for users and allows them to pick and choose which cards they want to focus on. Cards are split into 4 main categories: understanding the landscape, planning ahead, shifting thinking, and being well. I created these categories because while prototyping, I identified 2 problems. The first was that users initially felt overwhelmed by the number of cards and had trouble selecting activities to do. The second was that I noticed that different users had different needs and different experiences with depression, and the cards allowed them to focus on the areas they needed the most help with. On the back of each card, I created a label for students to fill in. I added this detail to the design because while prototyping, I learned that most users had not considered referring back to what they had produced. I understood it was important to make them actively think about when it would be useful to look at what they created again. Students' first interaction with Seekit is in an introductory session. Having someone guide students in their first interaction with the kit helps them get started. During my prototyping phase, I learned that although students were interested in doing the activities, they would often put them off for a while. And so having someone do it with them helps them get over that initial hurdle. I'm going to walk you through one of the sessions I hosted with an SVA student called Hannah. When Hannah came to the introductory session, we started by having a conversation about her depression, her experiences, and about how the kit works. Before tackling any of the activities, I invited Hannah to make the toolkit itself her own by writing her name, drawing, to get her comfortable with making things on the spot so she could embrace the kit's activities. We then moved on to choosing some cards. We talked about what she felt she needed to understand better and what she was comfortable doing around me, and we picked 3 cards to work on together. During the workshop, Hannah confirmed that she was more comfortable because I was doing the activities alongside her, because it didn't feel as though I was just watching and judging the work she was producing, but sharing in her experience. The first card Hannah picked asked her what were some of her favorite things. The card also suggested that she add them to the kit, but she decided she would prefer to draw them for now only. She then filled the back of the card, making a reminder to go reach for one of those things when she felt either sad, bored, or empty. At the end of the workshop, we talked about how she felt while doing the activities and made plans for how she would continue to use the kit on her own. She explained that she hadn't thought about how kind she could be to herself until she used this kit, and decided to spend the following couple of weeks doing some activities every morning. But this is just the beginning. There is potential to scale this to reach a larger number of students in these and many other universities. One possible way is to develop partnerships with universities' health and counseling services so they can provide students with the kits and become facilitators in the introductory sessions. There is also the possibility to develop a digital platform where students can order the kit and do the introductory sessions through a series of videos. The sessions I have carried out so far have been individual because the students wish for privacy, but there's definitely a potential for the work to be done in small groups. I believe it is truly important for us to build a community that connects students and where they can share their experiences with one another, because it is so important for them to recognize they're not alone in their struggles and that depression is more common than we all think. Thank you very much.